Hello humans, welcome back to another video, and since modding an RTX 3070 to have 16GB of VRAM is impractical, I'm going to be comparing an RTX 3070 to an RX 6800. Now the first game I'm going to be testing is Beamng.Drive at 1080p ultra settings. These perform relatively the same, but it's important to note that 4K at the same settings, the RX 6800 performs like 3 FPS better because of the 16GB of VRAM. Since I had no idea how to actually track the performance benchmarks, I'm just gonna say what the FPS was around. So in the overworld for Car Jump Arena, it was around 120 FPS average, and in the underground areas averaged around 200 FPS, which is quite similar to how the RTX 3070 and RX 6800 perform grid map. In West Coast USA, the more detailed areas, the averages were around 60 to 75 FPS, and in less detailed dense areas, the average FPS was around 110. For the RTX 3070, the average frame rate is around the same, 125 FPS, but in the less detailed areas, while it gets like 210 FPS average, its usage is way more, up to 90%. Which RX 6800 only got like 65% usage, so that means the physical output of the RX 6800 is a lot higher if games can properly utilize it. The average FPS for the RTX 3070 kind of went all over the place in the West Coast map, but averages in certain areas that were more detailed were around 53 FPS, and for less detailed areas it was around 63 to 75. For some reason the Redwood Forest portion of the map performed really well. It averaged around 75 to 85 FPS, which is kind of similar to the less detailed areas of the map, which got average 80 FPS to 110. For Beamng.Drive, the RX 6800 performed a few FPS better than the RTX 3070 with way less usage, so I'm gonna give a point to the RX 6800 for this round. Okay, for some reason the next game I'm gonna be benchmarking is FNF. Hard difficulty, it got on average 335 FPS. I don't know the exact specifics, it goes all over the place. And on Ghost VIP hard difficulty, it averaged around 650 FPS. For the RTX 3070, the average frame rate in Ghost was 450 FPS, and in Ghost VIP it was around 550, so that's a little bit lower than AMD. For AMD, I don't know why I've had so much skill issue in these recordings, but the average FPS for Arsenal, when the settings are cranked with shadows, is 130 FPS, and the lowest it ever got was 81. Leads to some noticeable stutters. If you're truly epic pro gamer with epic gamer monitor, and when I was dead, it randomly spiked to around 220 FPS and averaged around 200 FPS. Now, I think I know why that I've been having so much skill issue in these recordings. It's because, 1, I have extreme skill issue, and 2, 3000 ping randomly is kind of going to kill you. That's a pro tip in life, by the way. You need to know this. For AMD, I kind of forgot to open MSI Afterburner, but if you see the recording properly, then you can already just count the frames. It's averaging around 10 FPS because of how bad AMD's RTX performance is, and this is at 1080p maxed out settings. I'm just gonna show a bit more gameplay so you really understand how bad this is.
Computer-aided enrichment center. We hope your brief detention in the relaxation vault has been a pleasant one. Your specimen has been processed, and we are now ready to begin the test proper. Before we start, however, keep in mind that although fun and learning are the primary goals of all enrichment center activities, serious injuries may occur. For your own safety and the safety of others, please refrain from
Since the RTX 3070 uses hardware ray tracing instead of software ray tracing, its FPS was much better It averaged around 55 FPS, and the highest I saw it go was 66 instead of a measly 12. And also you can tell how much more power it's using because how quickly it spikes up to 80 something Celsius instead of AMD, which was around 50 still.
Most importantly, under no circumstances should you...
For Forza Horizon 5 at max settings, the average FPS for the RX 6800 when I'm just kind of driving around racing is around 110 FPS. And surprisingly, the RX 6800 isn't really affected if you turn ray tracing on or off. And it's surprising because how poorly Portal with RTX performs. For the RTX 3070, the average frame rate was around 90 FPS, which is a decent amount lower than the RX 6800, which shows that the RX 6800 has a decent amount more physical horsepower than the RTX 3070, while being more efficient in this game specifically, because I've never seen it go over 200 watts, while the RTX 3070 is really close to hitting 220 watts, which is its normal maximum wattage, but it goes up to 270 in some situations for me. For some reason, Furmark never stopped for the RTX 3070, but the RTX 3070 averaged 319 FPS on the 720p preset. And what I recently noticed is the RX 6800 has slightly higher clock speeds than the RTX 3070 by about 300 MHz, 2200 MHz compared to 1900 MHz. On Userbenchmark, the RX 6800 and RTX 3070 performed pretty much the exact same. The RX 6800 does a lot better at some specific things. The RX 6800 is also a bit more expensive than the RTX 3070 on the used market, $400 to $450 instead of $300 to $375. Well, this should be about it for this video because I have no other video games that I know of that have somewhat stable FPS that I benchmark. Bye.